I want to present you with a number 47. That is how many takes an actor I know recorded for one self tape, one scene, 4 hours. And there was 47 versions of himself stacked on one hard drive. And what was surprising was he could not tell you which version was good. And it was not because he lacked talent. It was because around take 20, he stopped becoming an actor and became a quality control inspector, pretty much, about his own left eyebrow. If you've ever done this, you know the kind of crazy I'm describing. You have the setup, you have the ring light, the lamp on. The deadline is looming, it's coming in the morning, and you cannot tell whether take 12 was better than take 44. And you've just lost the ability to judge your own work, period. So let me tell you what this is, because it has a name and it has a fix. It's not imposter syndrome, whatever that means. It's a specific, predictable psychological pattern that shows up in almost every actor who cares deeply about the work. Now, I'm going to show you exactly what is happening in your brain when you do this. And then I'm going to give you a protocol that ends it.
Welcome to Mental Rehearsal, the podcast for struggling actors and actors who struggle. In this business, talent gets you noticed. Mindset keeps you in the game. Meet Dr. Albert Bramante, talent agent, hypnotherapist, and NLP practitioner. Every episode, we'll expose the mental traps that hold actors back and give you practical tools to build confidence, beat self-sabotage, and perform at your best. So stop rehearsing your fears and start mentally rehearsing your success.
Today's self-tapes, it's that little box you record yourself at home. And their very specific way can quietly take good actors apart. Now, before I introduce you to an actor who recorded 47 takes, I want to set the scene because the world that created this problem is newer than most people realize. So let's go back before 2020. If you were in New York or Los Angeles, almost every audition was in person. You walked into a room and you did your scene. Yes, self-tapes existed, but they were the exception rather than the rule. If a project was shooting in Atlanta or somewhere else in the country or even abroad, you would tape. Or if a director already wanted you and just needed something on file, or let's say you were stuck on set or just not available on the day of the audition, in which you physically could not get into the room, you might tape in lieu of the in-person audition. But the default was always you in the room in front of people. Then, unfortunately, March 2020 happened. And overnight, everything moved to self-tape because of the pandemic. And even as this was happening at the end of March 2020, I predicted that this would happen, that we would not be going back. And even today in 2026, most commercials, virtually all film and TV, and some theater are all self-tapes. Yes, there are still some in-person calls for theater, and a few commercials will still bring you in, but all TV and film is self-tape. That has not changed, and I don't predict that's going to change anytime in the future. And I knew it would stick because the math is simple for the people who cast. They can see more actors this way. They do not have to run office space. And honestly, it's really the same product, because even when you went in person, they filmed you in that office and sent the tape to producers anyway. Most of the decision makers in the auditions were rarely in the room. They would look at the tape afterwards. Now, with self-tapes, it just cut out the room. It's the do-it-yourself version of what was already happening. Most actors fall into two camps when this. One camp misses the room, and you'll hear it on social media. We should go back to in person. I miss being in person. The other camp of actors loves the flexibility of self-tapes. You can self-tape on your schedule. There's no travel. There's no taking time off the job. There's no fighting traffic, no sitting in a waiting room. And both camps are right about something. The first camp is actually grieving. When you walked into the room and they taped you. However, a casting director would very often give you an adjustment, a redirect, or a note. And then you got to go again with new information. On the self-tape, there's no one there to hand you that adjustment. You're the actor, the reader, the camera operator, and now without meaning to, the director and the editor. And when you become your own director with unlimited takes and no outside eye, something specific and destructive tends to happen. Now, I will say one thing from the side of an agent. Self-tapes gave me something I never used to have. I never really got the chance to see the auditions that my clients were working on because we were never allowed in the room. We never went accompanying our clients into the room. Now I get to actually see the tapes and give feedback where before I had no idea what was going on or what was happening. So the tool is not the enemy here. The tool is fine. It's what we do with the tool that gets us into trouble. Which brings me to some people I want you to meet. So the first one is David. He's a working actor, mainly television and theater. But he was not really a household name, but someone who makes a living at this, doing a lot of New York and regional theater. And he did the occasional TV gigs. And 2 years ago, he got an audition for a recurring role. Not just a guest star role, but a recurring guest star role. This is the type of role that would shift an actor's career. He had 3 days to prepare for the tape, and he used all 3 days. He did takes on day 1, on day 2, and then day 3. By the deadline, by the time it was about to upload the tape, he had 50 takes on his drive. And he wanted to forward all 50 to his coach and also his manager. And he called me because he was so upset because he wasn't sure which was the right one to send. Because he'd been watching himself so long that he could not remember what good looked like anymore. His manager called back with a question. And we'll get to that question in a bit. The question was not about the performance, it was about the folder. Because he had sent all 50. It was not an audition anymore. It was a record of every attempt, timestamped by every correction. And his manager did not even know how to respond to that. We'll get back to this in a little bit. In 1831, the French writer Honoré de Balzac published a story called The Unknown Masterpiece. And the story follows a painter named Fraunhofer, who spent 10 years on a single portrait of a woman. He was certain it was the greatest painting ever made, and he has shown it to no one. Finally, he agreed to unveil it to 2 younger artists. Now, the canvas comes down, and what they saw was not a woman. It was 10 years of corrections layered on top of each other. Thousands of brushstrokes fighting thousands of other brushstrokes. Until the original image was just buried completely. And one corner almost hidden, there was a single perfect foot. One perfect foot, and around it was nothing but chaos. Now I'll come back to Fraunhofer in a bit. So let's talk about what's going on when you actually watch yourself 47 times. There's a concept known as semantic satiation, and it was documented first in the 1960s. The short version is when you repeat the same signal over and over again, your brain stops processing it normally. The meaning just drains out. You felt this with words. Say the word chair out loud 20 times. Chair, 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 chair. At some point, it stops becoming a word and turns into noise. The same thing happens when you watch the same take over and over. By take 7 or 8, you move past honest evaluation. By take 15, you're not watching performance anymore. You're watching pixels, the eyebrow, the half second before your first line, the blink rate. None of this has anything to do with whether the tape book's a job. Brené Brown, who spent her career on vulnerability, shame, and perfectionism, and one of the important findings is this: perfectionism is not about high standards, it's about fear. She draws a line between healthy striving, which points at doing your best, and perfectionism, which is avoiding judgment. Healthy striving asks, how can I improve? Perfectionism asks, how do I avoid looking bad? Different questions in opposite directions. One takes you deeper into the work, and the other takes you to take 47. Barry Schwartz wrote a book called The Paradox of Choice. And his center point is this: uncomfortable is what happens when there's more options. See, more options do not make us happier. They make us more anxious. With 2 takes, you can choose one or the other. When it comes to 47, you cannot. The decision breaks down, and whenever you finally pick, feels worse, because now you're haunted by 46 you did not choose. And it's not because you're bad at this, it's that you handed yourself an impossible task. I mean, think about when you want to read a book and you have 20 books in front of you. Most of the time, you're not going to read at all because you have what we call decision paralysis. So, in my experience, this really breaks down to the 3 fairly predictable stages. Stage 1 is preparation, and it's healthy. You're learning the material. You're making choices, in a sense, and you're doing the work. That's take 1, 2, and 3. Now, after that, stage 2 becomes obsession. You have a good take, but you want a better one, and you keep going. And the thing you were judging keeps shifting under you. And that really takes you all the way to take 20. Now, at stage 3, you're at paralysis. And that is what we're at take 47. Your brain has stopped helping. You're exhausted, you're overstimulated, and your amygdala has started treating a self-tape like a threat. You move from creative mode into survival mode. And the honest truth, what you do at stage 3 will never help. The decisions you made here never improve the final product. And the tape you send from take 47, almost 100%, I can guarantee you, will never represent your best. And I spoke with a lot of casting directors over the years, and one of the things that one of them has said to me stuck in my head. And she said, I can always tell when an actor has watched themselves so many times over a self-tape. There's a specific deadness in their eyes. And it's not because of bad acting. It's because they're so exhausted. So there's a difference between when someone is performing a scene and when someone is evaluating their own performance. And she said she can feel it through a screen. So sit with this for a second. The very thing you are doing to improve the tape, the endless watching, the endless fixing, is the thing that drains out the quality that they're actually looking for. They're not looking for perfection. They're looking for being present. Are you telling the character's truth? Are you living the character's truth? They're not necessarily care about the technical precision. What they're looking for is a human being having a real experience in a scene. Your left eyebrow, they couldn't care less. Your blink rate, it's irrelevant. Can this person or character live in a scene and be real? And that's all a question. And I can guarantee that's going to be in your first 3 takes and never at take 47. So I'll tell you one more story, then we'll go into the coaching tool here. I worked with an actress. Now, she had some good credits, but she never booked from self-tapes. She always booked from in person. And when we talked about a process, she would spend anywhere from 4 to 6 hours on a tape. She had a whole system. She had multiple camera setups. She had lighting tweaks and even a spreadsheet, believe it or not. Because I asked to see her process. And then I said, okay, I want to look at take 1. I don't want to look at take 30. And of course, she didn't want to. Take 1 was alive. Yes, it was a little rough, but it was alive and present. And then in one part of the scene, she had laughed, not intentionally. It was a nervous laughter, like almost like a nervous tick, because she had messed up the line in her eyes. It wasn't clear in the tape that she flubbed the line, but in her eyes, she did. So I asked her for a challenge. I said, why don't you send that tape in? And she was reluctant, but she did. It turns out she booked the job. Not only did she book the job, but when she was on set, the director approached her and said, I like the laughter you put into it. We're going to write that into the script for your character to laugh in this scene. So sometimes authenticity can trump perfectionism any time of the day. Now, this may not work in every case, but I will argue to the ends of the earth that authenticity beats perfectionism any time of the day. So here's a protocol, and it's really 3 steps. I call it the 3-take protocol, and it's built on the threshold pattern in neurolinguistic programming. And then also it's just used as a simple anchor. Now, if these terms are new, do not worry. I'll explain as we go. The core idea is this. I'm not asking you to trust the process. I'm asking you to trust the data. Because when you look at expert performance research and you listen to casting directors and you look at what actors actually book from, the story is consistent. Your best work always happens early. Your worst decisions happen later. So let's build a process to work with that instead of against it. So step 1 is 3 takes. You record exactly 3 takes, not 4, 3. Take 1 is for the material, reminding your body and voice of the scene. Do not judge it. Do not watch it. Just do it. Take 2 is for the relationship, finding the other person in the scene, the connection, the reason why it matters. And take 3 is for the commitment. You prepared, you found the relationship now, and trust it. And you stop managing and start living. And 3 takes, that's the whole set. And I know what you're thinking, but what if take 3 is off? What if I stumble on a word? Most of what you call off is actually human. And most of what you're trying to fix is not broken. Now, the next part, step 2, is the physical start and stop anchor. This may seem a little bit odd, especially if you're new to anchoring, but stay with me. Before each take, do one simple thing. Press your thumb and index finger together. Hold for 3 seconds. That becomes your start state. It's a signal to your nervous system. I am shifting into performance now. I'm not a judge. I'm a person living in a scene. When the take ends, press your thumb and middle finger together and hold for 3 seconds. Release. That is your stop state. The take is over. You're stepping out of it. One of the most dangerous things you can do in a self-tape situation is try to decide what you're sending when you're still inside the emotional state of take 3. The anchor is a pattern interrupt. It draws a clean line between performing and deciding, and it tells your analytical brain, okay, the creative work is done, and now it's time to do one small specific job. And then the next step is 3 objective questions. After your 3 takes, with each one being exactly once, you're not hunting for perfection. Answer 3 questions. 1, did you hear the text? Can you hear me clearly, in a sense? Did the words sound like they came from the character versus reciting it or acting? 2, was the relationship between the characters clear? Could someone watching tell who this person is to the other person in the scene. And 3, were you committed? I'm not talking polished, but committed. Was there real investment in the moment? That's it. 3 questions for each of the 3 takes. The take with the most yeses is the one you send. And then here's this part. You send it. You don't watch it again. You do not second guess it. You have done your job. Now let the work go do its job. Now remember Frenhofer, the painter? When the younger artists looked at his canvas and saw only chaos, he did not believe them. He sent them away, certain they just could not see what he saw. That night he burned everything. Every canvas, every sketch. Then he died. Balzac never spells out why, but most scholars read it this way. He finally saw what they saw. 10 years of corrections that had buried the original truth under layer after layer of doubt. And the tragedy is not that he failed. It's that the original was probably extraordinary. It was under there the whole entire time. It just got buried. So your first few takes are the original. Take 47 are the corrections. Now, going back to David, his manager called back and said, well, how many takes is this? And she said to him, I'm not watching 50. Send me the first 3. And he did. And take 2 was a 1. They both knew it within 30 seconds. It wasn't polished, but there was a spot where he fumbled a word, but he recovered with something more interesting than what was written. We submitted take 2. See, 50 takes, and the answer was in the first 3. Now, David unfortunately didn't book the pilot, and I'll be honest with you about that. But here's what happened. He started running the 3-take protocol in every tape as a practice, as a way of trusting his preparation instead of trying to manufacture certainty by repeating himself. Now, I'm making it clear it's 3 takes. You certainly should be rehearsing the scene way before you put the camera on, but it's 3 actual takes. And 3 months later, he booked his first guest star. 6 months after that, a recurring role in a different show. And he was getting complimented by casting directors how present he was and how strong his performances were. And he even told me he used to think that the deadline was his enemy. And he would resent only having 24 or 48 hours. Now, with the Screen Actors Guild recent contract, is that most self-tapes, if not really all, should have at least 48 hours to prepare, especially if it's a multi-page scene. But he used to resent having that. And now, learning this and missing the pilot the first time might have been the best thing that happened to him. It's because he learned how to make this work. So this is actually really not about self-tapes. This is about identity. The difference between an actor who trusts the preparation and one who was always trying to earn a trust that was already built. So perfectionism is often dressed up in virtue. Separates serious professionals from people who do not care. And I understand why. The love of quality is real. But perfectionism is not discipline. Perfectionism is fear disguised as discipline. So the actors I've watched do their best work and build new careers are not the ones sending in the most polished tape. They're the ones who trust themselves enough to let the work be what it is. They've learned something that takes most people years. Preparation is where your control lives, and performance is where you let the control go. Take 47 is what happens when you refuse to let go. And if that is where you are right now, stuck, I want you to note it without beating yourself up about it. The 3-take protocol is not magic. It's a structure for practicing trust. 3 takes, a physical anchor, 3 honest questions, and then the willingness to send it and stop watching. The last part is the hardest. And it might also be the most important thing you practice this week. So here's one thing I will leave you sitting with. Where in your work are you currently at? Is it take 47? If you're wrestling at what we talked about today, reach out to me and I can help you through this. I can help you create an identity shift. I have a recording that I will make available to you. Next week, something I get asked about constantly, one of the most damaging things happening to actors right now, it's called the comparison trap. What social media is doing to your sense of your career. Why watching someone else book feels like losing something yourself. And what the research actually tells you about handling it without either quitting Instagram or pretending like it doesn't touch you. See you next time.
Thanks for listening to Mental Rehearsal. If this episode made you think, share it with another actor. Then visit mentalrehearsal.show for more tools and resources. And don't forget to follow the show. Until next time, don't just rehearse your lines, rehearse your mind.